Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel James Wyatt with us earlier tonight. You will be able to see his interview via YouTube because we will have it on our TECN TV as well as the Exceptional Conservative Show channels. You will also be able to see it on BitChute because Colonel Jim's voice and his message is so poignant for this hour. This hour where people have confused wisdom for foolishness. They have compared logic to emotion and have allowed their emotions to run over them. Colonel James Wyatt is the founder of Nanny Helen Burroughs Project. You can find his info at nburroughsinfo.org, or you can go to Facebook and find it at Nanny Helen Burroughs. But the message comes more elegantly from the Colonel than it ever comes from my lips. But you're going to get the taste of my lips for probably the next 30 minutes, and I'm going to break some things down for you in a way that you probably don't hear it on an urban conservative television network. Let me just be very frank and be real with you. America is screwed up. Big time. Bigly, if I could say bigly. America is screwed up. And they have watched the swamp. And a lot of people have this idea that it's just the radical left, the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa crowd, the AOC group. But the silence that you're hearing from the rhinos appreciably makes you understand that America screwed up. You see, let me explain to you. Colonel Jim has served in the military for an extended part of his life. He understands discipline and he understands teamwork. You see, you might have a super soldier, but without an army behind him, how does he defeat the enemy? Unfortunately, we have made the God look structure of Trump so great and so resonant amongst us that we thought that Donald Trump could do everything all by himself. While you look at Pennsylvania, you look at Georgia, you look at Michigan, you look at Wisconsin, you look at all these places, and somehow something was missing. You see, it wasn't that Donald Trump was missing because he was going to all those places and 25,000, 30,000 people lined up. Even with the risk of coronavirus, they came out to see him. They support him. But something else was missing. And let me clue you on what was really missing.
One man who knows a lot about surviving in the cutthroat environment of US politics is Republican Mike Huckabee, who served over 10 years as the governor of Arkansas. He twice ran for the presidency and was one of more than a dozen candidates swept aside by Donald Trump in the 2016 race for the Republican Party's presidential nomination. Mike Huckabee knows firsthand how fierce a fighter Trump can be, and he's not buying the pundits' predictions of a Trump landslide loss. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, thanks for joining Sky News. Simply put, the poll numbers are terrible for President Trump. How does he turn it around? What exactly is the re-election strategy?
Well, the poll numbers were terrible 4 years ago, right about this time. In fact, they were terrible a month before the election. I think two things are at play. One, I'm not going to say that the president doesn't have some, maybe some course corrections to make. I think that is correct. But I also believe that polls are not completely accurate when it comes to President Trump because there are so many people who simply do not want to tell a pollster or anybody that they're going to vote for Donald Trump. They don't want to be called a bigot, a racist, a homophobe, a xenophobe. They get called all sorts of names. They have things thrown at their homes, and they just don't want to go through that. But when it comes right down to it, and they have to go into the voting booth and decide what kind of policies they want. Do they want the policies of Donald Trump, which cut taxes, stopped regulation, believes in the sanctity of life, believes in religious liberty, personal freedom, law and order? Or do you want The policies of Joe Biden, the Green New Deal, higher taxes, open borders, mob rule, where the police are defunded. These are big, huge differences. And I think as the election draws near and both of these men stand on the same stage at a debate, you'll see those numbers shift and shift quickly and dramatically.
Now, Donald Trump has long spruiked his success in boosting the US economy, and he used to have the stats to back that up. But that's all changed now due to the COVID-19 crisis. The US unemployment rate is near Great Depression levels. So how does he play it now? How can he make the economy the focus of his campaign? And if that's not the focus, what should be?
Well, I think a lot of people recognize that he didn't create the COVID crisis and that the economy was roaring before it happened. And through no fault of his own, everything collapsed when people lost their jobs and businesses shut down. Now,
I want to stop right there because Dave is in the chat room tonight, and I love my boy Dave. He says the bigger problem in this, all of us thought shield was on our side, and now we're hearing many of them holler, Hell Hydra. Dave, you got my vision. You understand exactly what I'm saying. Unfortunately, there is always a chess match that is being played when it comes to politics. I received this note before I go on from Ms. Intern, who helps me during the course of shows with information and data. This is from the Epic Times from today. It says the former data and strategy director for President Donald Trump's 2016 election campaign has canceled his vacation plans to comb through election data for voter fraud. Matt Brainard and his wife had planned to be in the Dominican Republic, but right now, this is where I'm needed, he said on YouTube on November 8th. Brainard has assembled a team to look for inconsistencies in the 6 contested states: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. So far, they've identified 1.25 million voter issues that they're following up through phone calls and against other databases. Let me give you that number just one more time for you following along at home. And you can check it out on the Epoch Times, EPOCH Times. 1.25 million. A lot of people are looking at the news stories that the president is downtrodden and withdrawing legal teams from Arizona and from Michigan. But I want you to understand something first and foremost. The objective was not to win in the local court. The objective was not to win in the state court. The objective was not to win in the federal court. The objective is to win in the Supreme Court, which has the authority and the power to throw out many of the ballots. Looking at 1.25 million, there are many more ballots that should be thrown out. How is it that Donald Trump went to bed way up, and then around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning the next day, he's way down? Is that coinky dinky? I think not. What was missing in all of this? You see, there are people who are complaining, didn't the Republicans know that this was going to happen? Didn't the Republicans understand that we were in the fight of our lives to save this country from the threat of Marxism? You have a communist agent in Joe Biden who's been elected against a man who's been impeached for Russia collusion that didn't happen. What was missing in all of this? Tell you what was missing in all of this, ladies and gentlemen. It's the swamp.
Granted, I think we're seeing some pretty dramatic comebacks in the stock market, seeing jobs start to come back, although, it's not an immediate thing. So Yes, the COVID crisis has upended the economic numbers that the president had.
Upended, yes. But who in American history ever had a 33% GDP? I'm waiting. You can't name one. Only one so far, and his name was Donald Trump. We saw a rebound in our economy. But as you listen today to individuals like Governor Hogan from Maryland and Lori Lightfoot from Chicago, you listen to individuals who have gotten swept by the emotions. Now remember, we were once told that the greatest concern that we had was mortality regarding COVID. And now mortality is down 85% from where it was in April. And then they told us it's not mortality, it's cases. Cases. And we have an uptick in cases. And yes, there are hospitals that are being used, but there are some hospitals which are not being used, and those individuals are being sent to those hospitals. What are you saying to me, Ken? I'm saying to you that a lot of Americans blame Donald Trump instead of blaming Xi Jinping. They blamed Donald Trump. Some did it emotionally and some did it politically. Some understood that if I connect the deaths of people to the President of the United States, then he will be the one who gets punished for something that was beyond his control. What's missing, ladies and gentlemen, is that we sent a super soldier to Washington who did a tremendous work, a glorious work in the time period. In a few moments, I'm going to tell you many of his accomplishments, including 4 Nobel Peace Prize offerings. But we sent a super soldier and we didn't send an army to back him up. Notice how quiet the rhinos are in Washington right now. They're not volunteering to inspect their state. They're not on the microphone saying, you know what, Fox News, you screwed this. Donald Trump is the man. No, they're very quiet because Donald Trump wanted to get rid of the swamp. And America, the swamp includes your congressman, it includes your governor, it includes your mayor, it includes your council member, it includes your sheriff and district attorney. It includes your Secretary of State. It includes even the dog catcher. America is filthy, ladies and gentlemen, with corruption.
When you look back over this almighty career and we look internationally, how do you feel about Trump as against previous American presidents? Do we need to fear Trump's eccentricities, or should we embrace him?
No, well, you're asking a bad witness here. I think Trump has highlighted many of the problems of world politics. I mean, the metaphor of the Trump issue when he said drain the swamp was that Donald Trump had a private conversation, telephone conversation with the Australian Prime Minister Turnbull. A private conversation. Donald Trump picks up the paper the next day and the details are in the Washington Post. And he says something wrong with the system here. If I can't speak to an international leader without knowing that somewhere up here there's something in the ceiling that's representing all of that straight out to a media source, then there is something seriously wrong. And I think Trump has dismantled many of the impediments that have existed towards good government. And have a look at the figures. I mean, there are more blacks employed than ever before, lower levels of black unemployment, more Hispanics in jobs, more women in jobs, economic growth until the pandemic came along, economic growth at unprecedented levels. I mean, he's got a problem on his hands now because there are 30 million Americans unemployed and they vote It's going to be tough. But he breeds this sense of optimism, make America great again. And people actually quite like that. And I think Morrison's doing a bit of that. He said, listen, we've got to cross this bridge. He said, we've flattened this curve, but I want to flatten the unemployment curve. I want to flatten the business debt curve. So that's the stuff that people want to hear. They want someone who can lead and be positive and give the suggestion that they know where they're heading. I think Trump's been a splendid person in terms of draining the swamp. But oh God,
oh God, here's the next line that you need to know. He's got so much more to do. He did. And the truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, we got so much more to do. You see, again, you sent a super soldier to Washington, and let me just go over some of the incredible things he has done as president. Almost 4 million jobs created since his election. More Americans are now employed than ever recorded before in our history. Remember, we used to keep numbers like the poverty rate, how people are out of the job market. Well, those numbers were off the chain under the Obama administration, and yet Donald Trump put chains around those numbers and brought them down. Manufacturing jobs grew at the fastest rate in more than 3 decades. Economic growth last quarter hit 4.2%. New unemployment claims recently hit a 49-year low. African American unemployment, everyone keeps talking about it. Hispanic American, Asian American unemployment, they all reach their lowest level. How about women? Which I didn't hear a lot when he was running for office. You know, they were always talking about the suburban woman, the suburban mother who just wants to have diversity and care about life. Well, guess what? Their unemployment reached the lowest rate in 65 years. Youth unemployment, lowest in a half century. Listen, veterans unemployment reached its lowest rate in nearly 20 years. As a result of the tax bill, small businesses had the lowest top marginal tax in more than 80 years. He was doing phenomenal work. His eyes weren't on the future. Well, guess what? He helped win the U.S. bid for the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles and win the U.S., Mexico, Canada's united bid for the 2026 World Cup. He was doing things remarkably well, engineering great successes at a time period where he couldn't possibly achieve that if he was an ordinary politician. He was going up a House that was against him and a Senate that slowed down much of what he wanted to do. And yet, look at all NATO allies are spending $69 billion more on defense since 2016. Canceled the illegal anti-coal so-called Clean Power Plan. Moved U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Imposed tariffs on foreign steel and aluminum to protect our national security. Imposed tariffs on China. And have begun building the wall to the longest level it has ever had. So, what was missing, Ken? He needs an army. Or at least he needed an army. Well, let me just say this. You all don't understand what you're about to get under the Biden-Harris presidency. You see, it's easy when you're scared. Oh my God, we could all die. I must wear a mask outside in the brazen air. The air that's filtered this world since its creation. Somehow, this particular poison will kill me. With a recovery rate of 99.9%. Fatality rate of less than 2%. And when you look at the numbers for the fatalities, 94% had nothing to do with COVID. They were about comorbidities, diabetes, heart disease, pneumonia, other issues. But that's not logical. You see, Ken, you don't understand. People don't think the way you think. People are scared. They're fearful. Donald Trump failed. Yeah, he absolutely failed by making certain that Pfizer had a vaccine after spending $2 billion to make it happen between March and October. March and October, ladies and gentlemen, almost 8 months. And this country had a vaccine, a provable and workable vaccine, unlike other nations that have tried and sputtered. But that guy who shut down the borders and being called a racist for doing so by the same man who says, I'm going to do everything that you did, but I'm going to do it better. Yeah, Joe Biden. Mr. Basement Man. And we look at the fact that 15 women flipped to Republican Democrat seats and are going to the House this year. You see, that was part of the Army, but when you look at the states of Georgia, when you look at North Carolina, when you look at Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where were we? As conservatives, where were we? We were all focused on the presidential when he needs an army. He always needed an army. You see, one man can't do this. It's not impossible for a man to do great works. He did great work, but he can't do it alone. And he can't do it with the swamp that's intact. Now you're about to make it swampier. Let me just give you an idea of what Mr. Biden wants to do. According to Biden, he will focus on police reform, enforcing equal housing, improving workplace environments, and education. Let me tell you in a nutshell what that means, and I'll go through. Police reform. That means switching money away from our police at the federal level and encouraging states to do it at the state level and local levels to social services. Now, mind you, any man would take a great psychiatrist or psychologist during the day to talk about their issues and problems. But how many of those social workers do you think are going to go out at 3 o'clock in the morning to de-escalate a matter? Oh, well, can they do that all the time? Really? Do they? How often does that de-escalation work? I don't hear too many cases where it does. What they want to do is make you less safe and more subject to the mobs that are coming into your neighborhoods, gangs that are still killing on the streets. Over 1,000 homicides in San Francisco, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Atlanta. Just those 4 cities. Just those 4 cities, over 1,000 homicides. They don't want you to have peace in your neighborhood because then you would need them more. And the more you need them, the more they get elected. How about enforcing equal housing? Do you know what that really means? It means that they can force the building of low-income housing in your suburban. Oh, Miss Suburban Woman, that you were so scared. Oh, so scared of COVID. I got to vote for Joe Biden because Joe Biden will make certain that my people don't die. Okay, let me give you some common sense here. All people who are born are guaranteed 2 things: taxes and death. And guess what? People do die. I know you don't like to hear that, but it's the truth. And the truth of the matter is, for those who have a very strong immunity, the likelihood of you dying is very slim. But for those with weaker immunities, and trust me, the mask doesn't do anything because it's been proven that 84% of the people who got COVID-19 actually wore a mask religiously. Religiously! Oh, speak about religion. What about Justice Alito speaking about the consternation that comes with these strict impositions against the civil rights and religious rights of people as a result of the coronavirus remedies, the mitigation. That we are slowly turning into not a free country, but a static one. Similar to China. Equal housing means that the government can tell you who lives next to you and who doesn't. That's the power of government. So all that money that you spent on that $750,000 home with a nice swimming pool in the back, guess what? Your neighbors might necessarily be low income individuals who would like to spend some swim time in that particular pool. Please make arrangements accordingly. Improving the workplace. What that means strictly is that the owner has limited rights, that the worker has all rights, and as well that the woman who proclaims things in the courtroom gets to win all the time. Improving the workplace environment means that the LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ agenda wins. And how about education? Education more along the lines of separate and unequal. You see, the more separate and unequal education is in America, the more you need Democrats and the more they'll be voted into office. Why? Because they keep promising you, if we spend a little bit more, we'll get a better educational outcome. When it's been proven that if you give people choices, they have better educational outcomes. But you know, there were so many people who were so scared. Oh, so scared. There are estimates going right now that by the end of spring 2021, there'll be very few cases, if any, of COVID-19. In addition to that, you might find that it's funny that the press seems to be able to exaggerate extensively the number of cases that are going on, and at least attributing the number of deaths. Now, most people would say that this particular recording is a threat to the well-being of Americans. But let me say this to you. That mask can't save you, and neither can Biden or Harris. Their intentions are strictly to take away your gun rights, to take away your First Amendment rights, to take away your religious freedoms, to take away anything that gets in the way of the state. But wait a minute. We need the state, don't we? Well, let's go to coronavirus. Since the strictness of the cases, the strictness of the mitigation has processed, the number of deaths have fallen, but the number of cases have risen. So in this particular case, does the strictness really make a difference? No, it doesn't. Because the majority of those mortalities that took place early on happened to be the elderly, happened to be in homes that were securing the well-being of the elderly. And the majority of which took place in 4 states. New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. Yeah. So, wait a minute. Are you not listening closely to what you have done? Instead of being more free and more relaxed, so that your children are able to go into the classroom and get their education, rather than sitting at home and may or may not show up and sleeping through most of their classes anyway over the TV screen if they're paying attention at all. Instead of having normalcy, you have practiced abnormalcy. And out of abnormalcy, you said that there would be one candidate who could possibly do a whole lot better. And that one candidate's chief of staff said earlier today that we're going to have a lockdown for 18 months. 18 months. Even though Dr. Fauci says the lockdowns don't work. Yeah, your God that you pray to daily, yeah, he said that. Lockdowns don't really work. They don't at all. Even those who are practicing it in European nations are finding it to be true. So the person that you voted into office wants to take away your First Amendment, your Second Amendment, your Third and your Fourth, your Fifth, and any other amendments that get in the way of a strong government, central government taking control of your life. And on top of that, they want to control your coming and your going, who you have Thanksgiving dinner with. And in fact, they'll send people out to find out who you had Thanksgiving dinner with. Maybe you need a thermometer at your front door or something, right? Ladies and gentlemen, you have inherited the wind tonight. If it is true that Joe Biden will be the President of the United States, I assure you that day one, you will regret not having the greatest president in American history, Donald Trump, at that inauguration, swearing in, ladies and gentlemen, for a second term. I guess what I have to do over the next 2 years, and I'll be talking with my team about this, is to make certain that not only do urban Americans, but suburban and rural Americans know that you made a mistake. We will be presenting the news and the commentary of great length regarding the mistake that's been made. Can we repair this mistake? Can we go back and fix this? Will there ever be another person who can actually mobilize a great nation like this to actually do the work necessary to drain the swamp? Well, the answer to the two questions, number one, it's repairable. We can fix that. We can make certain that we win the 2 Senate seats and slow everything down for 2 years until we take over the House in 2022. But there's more to this. You see, 20% of African American males voted for Donald Trump. Voted for Donald Trump. Those men want to make a change in their homes and in their neighborhoods and in their churches and in their lives. More than 40% of Hispanics did the very same thing. They want what they were getting with Donald Trump, and they won't return back. They don't want to go back, and they never will go back. What was missing is us. Us doing what was right. The right media, like TECN TV. The right Christian conservatives getting that viewpoint out. And trust me, Facebook and Twitter, not your homebodies. Nah, they're not going to help you. Finding other venues and avenues so that you're not dependent on just one or two. What was missing is us. You see, in the end, we're going to eventually have to blame ourselves because we felt that if we change captains on the horse, that the race would be won easier. It's not. Herd immunity happens. It does, no matter what you try. There are ways that you can mitigate against people that already have it, but those that don't, it's very tough. Very tough indeed. No way keeping someone in a home is going to ever stop them from possibly getting the coronavirus. And in fact, what we're finding out is it's probably better that you get it, since 99.9% of the people actually survive it. So why are we so fearful, America? It's because generations have been groomed to be afraid. This is not the courage that the World War II generation spoke of. They fought to overcome racism. They fought for integration. They fought for the betterment of all Americans because they didn't see the color. They saw the character. They saw what they wanted America to be. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, there's a risk. There's a risk that a true corrupt individual will be sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with a gaudy group of characters who wish to perpetuate hatred, bitterness, discontent, defund the military, defund the police, control your very existence. And even fund the abortion of your baby. America, we can do better. And we will have to do better. TECN TV is committed to doing better. We're going to be meeting as a staff this weekend. And I'm going to be very upfront with you because I don't think a lot of people take us very seriously. We're going to be knocking down the doors of urban America like never before. You see, we need to make changes in urban America so that it can be saved. But no one in suburban or rural America can make that happen for us. We got to do it for ourselves. Kind of like what Nanny Helen Burroughs said, huh? But there are some things that you can do. You can support TECN TV. First, by starring it and making certain that you watch. We've had over 250,000 people come to our website this year, but you didn't hear that from any of my other conservative friends. If you want the truth, it's here for you. And we're going to do our very best to get that truth out, not just to you, but to Africa and the rest of the world. We'll fight with Guyana to make certain that its Marxist regime gets plundered and turned into a capitalist free market regime. Regime that it is, governed by the people, for the people, with the people's permission. You see, there's a lot of stuff that we can do around the world. I'm not here for my 15 minutes of fame. I already had those. I'm ready to change America. And I'm coming into your home every single night to make it happen. There will be a diversity of opinion, and there will be a diversity of voice on this particular network. The diversity of opinion varies between Christianity, conservatism, capitalism, constitutionalism, and individual sovereignty. We are a constitutional republic, federated that is. We believe in Republican values and Republican ideas. We do not believe in mob rule, which is what democracy is. We will have to bear with the mob for the next 4 years because a lot of people were afraid that Donald Trump couldn't control COVID. I would like to see someone outside of God that can. Name the country, please. But because we've made an error, at least for now, hopefully we get to the courts and this gets all figured out and we win. And we don't have to go through a dark winter, summer, spring, and fall. But hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, we can begin to convert, convince, and coerce those of the conservative viewpoint in urban America. You see, when we change urban America, we don't have to worry about Detroit. We don't have to worry about Maricopa County. We don't have to worry about Florida, Miami-Dade. You see, when we begin to change those communities right there, you already have the great strength of America right there in the center. By the way, I told you that we might flip New Mexico. We did get one seat. Yes, we did. And I'll be working on the other two as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for tuning in tonight and listening. If you would bear with us as we play one more commercial so that we can make some profit here, we will be back with more of the best in urban conservative talk right after these messages.